Welcome to episode 6 of the Growing Our Future in Weakley County Schools podcast. I'm your host, Erica Moore, Director of Communications. In this episode, we are continuing our special two-part series on the connection between education and government. Today, we're honored to welcome State Representative Tandy Darby onto the podcast for a deep dive on education with Director of Schools, Jeff Cupples. There's a lot of ground covered in this episode, like insights on state-level education policies, legislative updates, and they'll explore how these decisions will shape classrooms across Tennessee. They'll also touch on how leaders can work together to overcome challenges while staying focused on what's best for our students. There's a lot to unpack in this episode, so without any further ado, let's jump right into the conversation.
Well, Representative Darby, we want to say thank you for being with us today. I know you got a busy schedule, and so being on the podcast or Growing the Future, we've really tapped into that because it's what we do as teachers. It's also what we do as a county, right? We're farmers and we grow. So yes, we're growing our next generation. So for you to take the time to come away from your own job, but also your job representing us in Nashville, to be able to come spend some time, we really appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
So for our viewers out there, really I wanted to start a conversation with, and I know you've met a lot of people, you've shook a lot of hands, during the campaigns, but can you just kind of go into maybe your background? I know you're a proud graduate of Weakley County and from Greenfield, and I've kind of adopted this phrase really, the evidence of our expertise. A lot of times teachers don't see any of the evidence of their expertise because kids graduate, and if you teach them in second grade, the kid will graduate on down the road and they leave the county and they don't ever get to see the product. But it's great to have an alumni back into the county and especially doing some great things, not only for themselves, but for the whole county as well. So that evidence of expertise, you're it. So if you'll just tell us a little bit about yourself and then maybe why you went into politics to represent Weakley County.
Great question. And first, I want to say thank you for inviting me. We don't have the news media, TV and all that in this part of the world.
Right.
But what y'all are doing, the transparency that you're providing, I think it's over the top. And Forever Communications, thank y'all for hosting us.
Right.
But yeah, Mr. Cupples, it was 5 years ago. I'd been probably just about like the 90%
right.
In the county. Probably a lot more that knew what was going on than I did. And at that time, Tess was a senior, and we were looking at where she might have an opportunity to play ball. And Texas Tech was the very first school that offered her. And I told her, I said, Tess, it's, for a small town kid to get the red carpet rolled out, I said, you need to go on every visit that you can. And so we flew into Dallas, and Texas Tech had a representative there telling her why she needed to go to Texas Tech,
right.
A great gentleman. And we got to talking there. We had about a 2-hour layover, and we got to talking, and he kind of said, sir, hey, man, it's been a pleasure talking with you and talking with the kids. But he said, you can't tell Texas Tech that we've talked about politics and religion. I said, no, sir. I said, your secret's safe with me.
That's right.
But he said, I got to ask. He said, are you involved in politics? I said, no, sir. I said, I'm a vegetable salesman in West Tennessee and raising 3 kids. And I said, we work, at that time, we were working 7 days a week and get off in time for church on Sunday mornings. But I said, no, sir, I don't have time. He never cracked a smile. I was ready, waiting for the punchline there.
Right.
And he said, son, you've been blessed. He said, when do you plan on giving back? And it was a rabbit punch, and I don't believe in, since that time, if something happened, well, that's just a coincidence. That was stronger than that, and I think the good Lord put him there in front of me and kind of opened my eyes that said, hey, Tandy, you are blessed.
Right.
Find a way. If there's ever a chance there to give back, try to, and you may be the laughing stock of West Tennessee. But I'll try to put my best foot forward. And out of this whole deal, I may be a bad politician in the long run. But I can come back and look at my folks eye to eye and say I did what I said I was going to do.
Right.
And, I still got my mom with me, and, she's on me all the time.
Got some accountability.
Yeah, I got some accountability, yes, sir. And my wife and kids, you got to do what you say that you're going to do.
Right.
And I think for the most part, I've held up to that. And like I said, I may come back, Nashville may whip me one of these days, but I can come back and look at these people in the eye and say, hey, I did what I did, and definitely I wore my West Tennessee hat proud. Right. And I'm going to continue to do that.
Well, we appreciate you doing that.
Yes, sir.
And I know you got some battle scars from this last year.
Yes,
and
sir. Yes,
some
sir.
of the issues we'll get into later, but and being familiar with the Greenfield community, I know one of the key values that they hold there is integrity.
Yes, sir.
And you've acted with that. So,
and not just Greenfield, all of West Tennessee.
That's right.
It's a little bit different around here. You see people in Nashville that, man, you drop a microphone out of the ceiling or put a camera up, and it's a full-fledged race to who's going to be first.
Right.
I didn't listen that well in speech class, and it still bothers me to have to get up and perform in front of folks. I needed a light venue that's pretty dim. I do better there with setting it around the table or the lights are dim there and nobody sees how funny looking I am. And but I don't have that bone where it says, hey, you need to be out in front. Right. You need to be out there leading the charge on issues there that don't really matter. When you get to issues that's going to affect West Tennessee, I don't mind grabbing the bulls by the horn. Right. And hey, and we can get a lot of things done before we have to get on camera. But it is one of those things there that I've never, and I kind of wear it proud, Coach Cupples, because once I ever get to the point where I'm content, I don't think I'll be as effective as where I'm worried about what's being said. I got to say the right things. I think it's definitely a feather in my hat that I know I've always got to be on my toes. Right. And it's not all about just publications or visuals. You got to know what you're talking about. You got to present the message, and you got to invest in West Tennessee to a point there that you're doing the right thing, and it's going to help the people in West Tennessee.
That's right. Every time I cast a vote, and I cast a vote for you.
Oh, thank you, sir.
Hopefully I'm going to hit early voting before the 31st ends here in the county. But when I do that as a voter and as a citizen, I expect things, and I expect that person who I'm casting that vote for to go represent my values, what's good for my family on a very individual level, and then even on a much larger level, who's going to protect Weakley County Schools? Who's going to represent us in Nashville? And then even on a regional level, like you're talking about all of West Tennessee and the counties that you directly represent, and you've done that. And so, again, just a heartfelt thank you for that.
Well, thank you. Thank you. It's been an honor, and I've said it before, besides faith and family, it's been the best opportunity that I've ever had. And I really mean that. I met a lot of great people. Sure, just like in anybody's business, there's bad apples around. Well, one thing that I feel like, besides selling produce, one thing that I think works good on me is my talent evaluator. Right. And I think I can see things that are happening that you want to align yourself with the people here that are doing it for the right reasons. Right. And like I said, you got bad apples everywhere, and politics is no different.
Right, that's true. Well, talking about as far as serving our the district and counties that you have, what committees are you on in Nashville for those of us that are watching, maybe kind of getting a little bit of education?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We may cut into time here because the list is long. I'm on education. I'm not on higher ed. It's a smaller education committee. We only had maybe 4 bills that came through. Most of the time it was presentations. Calendar and rules. I've been on that since I was a freshman, so this is my 4th year of serving. Hopefully I'll get another year here after the election, another 2 years. And then I'm vice chair of agriculture, and then transportation. So I've got ag sub, ag full, transportation sub, transportation full, rules committee, and fiscal review.
Okay. So you're busy.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Well, again, thanks for the service. I know that's a lot, and even from this role, I'm having to educate myself on those committees and who we need to be talking to get the right things through.
Yes, sir.
That benefit Weakley County. But kind of getting into kind of the reason for the podcast today. What are some of the key issues as far as education in the state of Tennessee that you see from Nashville? And, is there anything that stands out to you that are going to be on the forefront, especially, new legislative session coming up?
Yes, sir. And, I feel like we won the battle last year against vouchers. They're not going to sugarcoat it. That's probably going to be one of the top things that's coming up this year also. Matter of fact, I talked to a lot of people across the state, and I think there's a couple of representatives that or senators that as soon as the election is over, the next day that they'll be filing bills. And Coach, I wish I knew what those bills say. We won't know till after it's all said and done. So I don't know how they'll read. I know the gist of where they're going with it,
Right.
but don't know what's in them there to be able to comment on accurately on what's in them.
Right. I know what I'm hearing too on our end up from the education is we're anticipating that coming up again, and so I definitely want to get into vouchers, but
Yes, sir.
maybe the larger umbrella is just funding in general. So maybe before we get into vouchers today, and I've got a few things, I just want to take advantage of your time and just hear, from your perspective. But if you don't mind, let's talk about funding.
Yes, sir.
And talk about TISA, which that's been a big topic as we're going through year two. And nothing's ever perfect the first time you pass it, and I get that, and I definitely want to go on record at, and I've said the same thing here in the county. TISAs have been good for Weakley County. It's been a better funding model in terms of total revenue as opposed to the old BEP. But one glaring weakness that's showing up with the TISA model, and I'm in the middle of, I'm on maybe page 3 of a TISA survey to send back in for the legislation, is the funding that we're getting specifically for raises, which ties into, the governor's, agenda and law
2026.
to get up to 50,000 by 2026. That's putting a big burden back on local funding bodies, and in our case, our Weakley County Commission. Our school board is definitely aware of that, and of course, we're all in favor for fighting for every dollar we can get for those teachers because they earn it. But the glaring problem that is showing up is the 185 million or whatever, the 25 million I think it is, that he's putting in each year for salary increases. Time that gets divvied out to each school system, and I know there's others like us because I'm talking to the superintendents around us, it's not covering your veteran teachers. So specifically, just a simple number here, 60% of the teachers in Weakley County don't get a raise through that law. And again, it's been good. I even went back and looked at the starting salary, and I read a quote in one article, and this is a big pat on the back for the governor, putting that in front of the legislation and getting that through with the budget. By the time he leaves office, he's going to have the opportunity to increase starting raise in Tennessee or starting salary for teachers, raise that by over 40%. That's a huge win. But then when you drill down into that number, really and truly, if you leave your veterans behind, because that 125 million I was talking about, when we divide that out, we're getting a little less than $500,000 will come in. All right, well, when you try to do raises for all our teachers in a school district our size, you're easily looking at $1.5 million. If you're trying to do a raise for the back end, that equals the raise on the front end. I've said multiple times that, and I use English because we've got an English 1, 2, 3, and 4 ELAs in every grade, and you're going to take it all the way to your senior year. So, but if I'm teaching English 3, for example, and I'm in the hallway and I'm monitoring students, during the class change, and then we've got a teacher we've just hired last year that's teaching maybe English 2, and they're getting, say, a $3,000 raise, and I'm getting a $500 raise, and I've been doing this 20 years, and that's a recipe for disaster. And not only from a cultural standpoint, it's even an ethical issue. It also falls apart because what I've tried to explain to our school board here in the county as well as the commission, our salary steps that we pay on are going to fold in on each other and crash, because pretty soon a teacher with 8 years experience is going to be out, have a higher salary than a teacher with 14 years experience. And they may be a better teacher. That's 100. I mean, I've seen that.
Yeah.
But that's a problem as you become a veteran. You don't get paid. So, I mean, have you heard maybe any talk addressing that issue? Because I know in the superintendent and TOS, that's been a big concern.
Yes, sir. And first, Coach, here before we go any further, you didn't bring it up, but I want to. The finishing number 6 in the state, or where we rank I think that's a testament to you. I think it's a testament to your administration, and definitely a testament to our teachers at what we value and what we put first. Because I will stand up and cheer because of the 5 counties in front of us. I'd sure like to see what the state money that's coming into them compared to the state money that's coming into us. Right. I think that's nobody talks about that. Right. Hey, everybody's glad to be number 6. Well, the way that we got there was tightening our belt, hiring good teachers, and an administration there that puts the kids first. Right. So first off, I want to say hats off to you. Now, we've had many conversations and plan to have many more, and this was your concern back before TISA ever came into your crystal ball was clear on this. You said, Tandy, what about year 4? What about year 3? What about year 4? What's it going to do here with our veteran teachers? How is this thing going to play? So in the back of my mind, hey, everybody's up in arms. We're high-fiving everybody. But the 4 to 5 years down the road, how does this thing look like? So please fill out that survey, and please make sure I get that, because that'll give me ammo to say, hey, listen, number 6 county in the state that are doing things right, we got a concern here. And I think that we'll get people to listen and maybe come up with a remedy here, because I do value the teachers that are coming out of UTM.
Absolutely.
The teachers that are going to be coming out of Bethel. They've got value. But also our veteran teachers here that have towed the line through thick and thin, good and bad, and did what's right and put Weakley County at number 6. That's huge.
That is.
And before I got here, when I was coming into, well, I hate to say I was driving. No, before I got here, when I was sitting at home there getting ready, I pulled up there. I asked Siri, where does Weakley County rank? Well, for another feather in your hat there, another website, which was, I think it was niche.com, had you at number 5. So, that's amazing. Yep. That's amazing. And like I said, it's a testament for what y'all stand on and where y'all value kids. And I didn't mean to dodge your question there.
No, you didn't.
TISA and the BEP formula, that's what was in when I got it. I think there was 2 people in the state that could give you the definition of how BEP worked. Yeah. So
how we funded? I don't know.
The algorithm on it was, it definitely took somebody from NASA or MIT there to get things figured out. TISA kind of dumbed it down a little bit for me. The algorithms are still there, but they put more emphasis on the students. Right. And I can take you to the exact spot where I asked Governor Lee, is this in any way a bridge for vouchers? He assured me that there was no way. Give me the list there of what did they look at it that's important, and it really was a shot in the arm for rural schools, things that come into play that wasn't into play with the BEP formula. Right. So there we are, here we are, but there's still concerns, and as always, I appreciate you not just standing and high-fiving here, but you're looking ahead at 3 and 4 years down the road that a lot of people are not looking at. Right. So that's a testament for who you are and what you are. And like I said, fill out the survey, and we're definitely going to have more conversations here, because that gives me the ammo that I need to make a legitimate argument.
Well, and where the rubber hits the road on that is just this past budget cycle. You talk about how does that affect our actual students in the classroom? Well, for example, we cut our laptops out. So one of the plans we had for the district is we're going to keep our inventory fresh on laptops. We went 1-to-1 during COVID. Those things like throwaway flat screen TVs, they're not going to last forever, and they're generally made now. You just buy a new one. So how do we keep that inventory fresh? Well, the plan we kind of had moving forward was every freshman would get a brand new laptop. So through that 9th grade, when they go into high school, we'll cycle them out. And but this year we had to cut that. So that was approximately $200,000. We had to cut our buses out of our budget. That's another $300,000. I think the last 90-passenger bus on state contract that we purchased was like $168,000, and we need some more 90s. So we cut some essentials out from transportation, from IT. Then that still didn't get us back where we needed to be. And where I'm linking all this together is we were trying to find money to give the veterans a raise. And So ultimately, in our scenario for our county, the board, they had a balanced budget, but it wasn't an equal pay raise in order to get balanced. So, luckily they did an amendment. I was asked, is this the budget you want to present? Well, heck no, it's not. So luckily they passed an amendment. I went back in, but then when we got into our funding body, going in front of the commission, to get that raise where it needed to be and still be, financially responsible for the rest of the budget, we were still $212,000 in the hole. Well, when the commission, didn't fund that through, where does that come from? That comes out of our fund balance. So right now, we've put over $200,000 into a recurring expense from a non-recurring revenue because that fund balance is just static. So where does that come next year? So that's the big issue that I'm seeing initially with TISA as it sits right now. Now, when you mentioned earlier, and I definitely want to get into this topic in detail, is the vouchers. If that gets reintroduced to the legislation, this is legislation for y'all to take up and vote on again. That's going to be another big battle, and I really don't understand why, because common sense kills it pretty quick if you just look at the data. But as far as us financially, TISA's been really good, but leaving those veteran teachers behind, and then here's another problem. When we try to break that money, I use the example. I'm trying to, when I eat a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, I want my peanut butter and jelly to go all the way to the edge of the crust.
Right.
So when I spread that real thin, well, the 500, a little less than 500,000 that comes in, if we spread that even for every teacher, one, the raise is not as big, so we're going to lose the competitiveness with the counties around us. The other part, though, is then we don't meet the law by 2026 because the front end is so watered down trying to spread it out. So it really creates some compounds, and we're still 44th in the union as far as teacher salary. I saw some data where our starting salary had climbed to 31. I'd probably argue it was a little bit higher than that in Tennessee just because the data was like 22, 23, and since then we've put, I don't know what the other states have done, obviously, but I do think we're making progress on that front end salary for sure with the law. But leaving those veterans behind, because it takes some time to hone your craft, like in any industry or expertise or craft, you got to learn. And kids are, more and more coming into kindergarten not ready, which is more time for that teacher to differentiate for those kids and make sure everybody's caught up and push the kids that are ready. So there's a lot that goes into that teacher salary that they deserve every penny, but I don't know that TISA's going to be able to keep up unless something's done.
Yep, no doubt. And like I said, your crystal ball was crystal clear on this because you said where the shortcomings were going to be 2 years ago. Right. And it's coming to fruition here that's where our shortcomings are. So first thing is a ask from the community, buy local, please.
Amen. Yep.
And because everybody can say, yeah, I'm for our schools, we're doing the right thing, and I'm guilty as much as anybody because you're somewhere and you're like, man, I need that, and you pick it up and you're like, man, I could have bought that in
drive home.
I could have bought it home, or fill up with gas,
or buy your car local.
Exactly.
Any of those things. Yeah.
Lots of things there. So yes, there are the ammo that I hope to get will be something that I will stand on because let's face it, we're not Williamson County. Williamson County's probably in the top 1% in the nation as far financial infrastructure. Right. And what those schools bring in, what the county brings in, it's a different argument for them. But for what we've got and what we've done, I think you can hang your hat on. Right. Yep.
Well, the school board's getting ready to start a new 5-year plan. We're kind of in the beginning phases of that. Our new one will run out our current one will run out in 2025. And of course, the first 3 years of that plan was from the board. That was enacted by Mr. Frazier. Obviously, got the wheels rolling, and then the last 2 years we finished it up. But one thing I've mentioned, the last 5-year plan has been effective. But when you look at the school board plan, one of the priorities is to recruit and retain effective teachers. So how do you do that? Well, the answer is, especially new teachers, salary, because you come out of college and you're looking to start your life and maybe start your family, soon. And so how do I get the most income coming into my house? Well, yep. again, when I'm sitting down and I'm recruiting somebody and they've already interviewed in Gibson County, just using a neighbor, for example, if that dollar amount is $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 more for that beginning teacher, that plays a big factor in landing them, as far as an interview and an offer and an acceptance. Now, veteran teachers, because we've got so many non-factors and intangibles that are not, or X factors and intangibles, it's a great place to live. It's, I love the fact I can get on a 4-lane road and drive to work and be there quick and there's no traffic. I mean, there's so many other little things, the culture in our schools being number one of those. A lot of times the veterans, they'll leave and they'll come back to the district in some cases because or they'll make contact and say, I wish I would have stayed. So the veterans we can keep, but we don't need to leave them behind when we're thinking about salaries, So anyway, I am really concerned about that. And the first question on that survey was, the base number is $7,075. Would you change that? If so, how? Well, mine went up, and I've got a long dissertation as to why, But it's mainly to balance up our budget and still keep our veterans on pace. And another little point I just jotted down, I read some data probably 2 or 3 weeks ago. In Tennessee, our salaries are increasing, and that's great because we've been so low and we're still low. But then when you factor in the economy, and that's maybe something, I don't know if we'll have time today to get into economic development and how that, education's role in that. The mayor and I talked about that a little bit in part 1 of this education and government series we're doing. But when you look at inflation and you break that number down, our teachers now, and this is a nationwide number, not just a Tennessee issue, but teachers are making less than they did in 2008. So then you zoom in on Tennessee, where we've got to drive to increase salaries to not be 44th in the country. Every little bit we gain, you give them a 3% increase, and then you got 8% increase, or in this case, groceries 30% in some cases. You really can't see the money in your pocket, and so that's another thing that a little bit out of my control. I can only sing from the mountaintop, but like Nashville's got to look at too is the money real money given all the other factors. Now, hopefully, if the economy turns better and upcoming years, then the raise we have got will mean more. But very rarely, once things go up, do they come back down.
Right.
So, but anyway, let's staying on funding. Let's talk about fiscal capacity, and I think that'll be a good segue that goes into the vouchers. In Weakley County's case, I'm not sure what Henry and Carroll County would be. I've looked at them at different times, but not to the point where I remember them. But in our case, 76% of our funding comes in from the state. Okay, 24%, and that changes a little bit as I look at TASER and some of the data, which is that survey. But when you look at that, and then you go back and you say, well, the veterans aren't being paid, where's that money come from? At some point, that's got to come back to your local funding body. Now, I know our county commission feels that pressure too, and I think part of the package deal when TISA first rolled out was, and I remember this directly sitting in a meeting where your local funding body is not going to be heavy pressure on them for probably 4 or 5 years. And again, we're on year 2, and after year 1, the school system was already in the hole in order to make that happen. And so that's just another little added thing I want to put out there for our county. But with local fiscal capacity, you mentioned it a while ago when you mentioned Williamson County. That's what made me think about that. I may be wrong, but you're talking about what they've got in terms of state funding. I want to say their mix is like 96-4. Last time, I'm recalling that after looking at that data a long time ago, but let's just call it an even 95% is funded locally in that school system. And only 5% is coming in from the state because it's a wealthy, affluent county. All right, well, let's jump into these vouchers. Going back to when you asked the governor, is this tied to a voucher system in any way? Well, when you look at the state report cards, our lowest scoring students, and when you look at data, you just got to call it what it is. The way they set the report card up for public schools is what they call your lowest 25%. That gets counted twice in that report card for public schools. So, when that came out, my first question when I'm reading that literature, I'm like, why? How are we getting counted twice in that?
It's not apples to apples.
It's not. But then all of a sudden we get, TISA. Now the funding's tied to each student, which can be a good thing. For example, we had a school, kindergarten numbers were growing, which is a great thing for the county. And we really didn't have the funds to hire another teacher. We'd already been through the budget cycle. But the good thing about that is if, if you get 10 extra students and that overloads your kindergarten classes and we've got to hire a kindergarten teacher, well, that's $70,000 plus that'll come in with them. So that covers the salary of a teacher. So that part's been really good. Of course, the flip side is pretty gloomy. If you lose those 10 kids,
Yeah.
you're asking the teacher to not come back.
Yep.
And I think when you get into like Williamson County and local fiscal capacity, if any kind of voucher bill gets through and becomes a law, well, if you look at us, if we lose 10 kids, we lose, over $70,000. Williamson County is really not going to lose that because where's all their money coming from? Local. So, and I'll get into this maybe a little bit later as time permits, but the bottom line is the rich are going to get richer.
Oh, and that's, so many, and like I said, we're hypothetically speaking because we don't know what's in the bill, but we've got a general idea.
Right.
So if it resembles what it did last year, well, just like one of my buddies lives in Farragut. As of right now, more than half the students in that in Farragut go to a private school already. So you're telling me that the families are going to get a $7,000 bump for people that, and let me first say, private school, homeschool, our Christian school in Weakley County. If you feel led to do that and you think that you're capable, and I don't have a problem with
Absolutely.
that. I don't have a problem with that at all. That's your right as a parent, and you're looking out for your kids. But with this voucher deal, public money going to private institutions, we're always going to have public schools.
Right.
We're always going to have it. And when we start, and this is just the tip of the iceberg, is academia. Because when your star athletes, when your star band members, whatever clubs that you got, your people there that strive in those areas, and these private schools see an avenue that they're able to grab these kids, those are going to be the first ones that are accepted. The ones that are not thriving, they may not get in. So the deal of saying, and I've seen the surveys, the first question is, parents, do you believe in having a right to where your kid goes to school? Well, everybody's going to vote, say yes on that.
Right.
Well, let's dig down a little bit deeper. You might have the right, but a private school has the right to accept and not to accept. So my question is, when these in committee meetings and behind closed doors, guys, where's this going to be at in 3 or 4 years? Because all your brighter students, your athletically gifted students, they're going to be the first ones to go. So you start bringing those kids that are making 32s, 34s, or 28s on ACTs, guys, they bring the average up for the school. When those are the first ones siphoned off, it's going to get worse and worse, and you become a dartboard for everything negative about public schools. And it gets the dartboard gets bigger and bigger, but you're the avenue for it being worse. So, and I don't know if I finished the story about Farragut, but more than half those students are already going to private school. So you're going to stroke a check to those families that are already going to private school and have the means to go, and you're going to give them $7,000 more of folks that don't have the means to go to a private school. I can't get over that. I can't fathom that. And then let's take it even further than that. Let's go to a homeschool. Let's go to let's just say the Christian school here in West Tennessee. Yeah, man, that's a $7,000 bump for a family, or a $7,000 bump for the Christian school. But it may not be the first year, may not be the second year, but there's going to be hoops and red tape. Wait a minute, guys. Whoa, you're taking this money from the state. you're going to have to do this accredited testing for this to happen. So don't look at it with goggles on that this is the way it is.
Right.
There's going to be stipulations on down the road that nobody wants to talk about right now because either it's a $7,000 bump or a $7,000 loss, but you got to look for the big picture there of what comes with this.
Right.
And that kind of doesn't get talked about a lot. And like I said, we're all hypothetically speaking, don't know what's in it, but just if it's the same type gist of what it was last year, that's some questions
We can
that's got to be
definitely at least
answered.
go by what's already been in
Yes,
it,
sir.
you know,
Yes, sir.
and what the models are in the other states. Because from what I've read, a lot of what Tennessee's trying to do is what the other states are trying to do,
And-
and it's not working.
And Coach, just like we talked about earlier, I've done the research. I've looked, I've listened, I've read. I can't see where I'm not going to use the word profitable because that can be construed two different ways. I don't see where it's a benefit for the kid. That's the best way to put it, because you're strengthening one area and dampening the other area. And I don't see where it works. The data does not show that it works.
Right. And everything you've said, there's so much packed in that. I wish we had enough time because there's so much I'd like to pull out of that suitcase. But, the first thought, when you look at the states have already done this, the data is out there. It's 70 to 90% of the kids who are taking that public tax dollar money, they're already in private school. So they're just supplementing the tuition they're already paying. Now, I know the flip argument to that is, well, I'm a taxpayer too if I'm a parent, and I get that. But generally speaking, the precedent in the United States has been pretty solid. Public tax dollars go to public schools, public roads. I mean, we don't build your private driveway with my public tax dollars,
Yeah.
So it's pretty, the public tax dollars to be used for the public good. And again, I know the money follows the student, and I can see the other side of that. But the reality is what they're pitching, which is if you're in a failing school, you get the opportunity to go to some glamorous school, if you want to use that term. That's not happening in any of the data that I've seen in any of these states. The corruption that's took place with this money transfer in hands has been off the chart. And the biggest thing is the ballooning budgets. I looked at some data, and I want to read this just for whoever takes the time to watch this podcast or listen to it. Let me find it because it's staggering. And I want to say it's coming out of Arizona. So when Arizona started theirs in 2022, the initial 23-24 budget for that school, for that state, $65 million was supposed to go to vouchers, is what it was going to cost. And then they predicted that would double, and then so they projected in 24-25 it'd be a $125 million investment by the state, public tax dollars going into vouchers. The expansion through this voucher program ballooned to $332 million from 65 to 332, and then now they're projecting for this up for 24-25, $429 million. How do you pay for that? Roads don't get paved. I mean, like that money's got to come from somewhere. And in my case, where I really want to sing is public schools get cut.
Yes. Yes.
There's no other way to pay for that kind of, and that's just one model, but you can find that in a lot of these states.
Oh, yeah. Like I said, I've looked at the data. I don't see anywhere that I've looked that this is a bell ringer. This is where you're on the right track. And in a nutshell, it lessens the effectiveness of public schools. And public schools is what we're going to have those forever, in my opinion. And it's something that we've got to make right here. In a little bit of a way, I feel like the government is wanting to pass the buck, that we really hadn't figured out a great way to get to where we want to be with public schools. So y'all need to handle it. That wasn't what we signed up for.
Right.
Hey, it's there to make. We got to make hard decisions, but it's got to be when the kids are the common denominator, you're doing the right thing. When politics comes in, and you're not, and the kids are not the common denominator in every equation, then that's where we're at.
And I understand, and you do well as well. In our county, the community school is a heartbeat. Everything flows through that community school. And one of the reasons, going back to being number 6 or number 5 on that other website is it's because the teachers know the kids. And, from a school district standpoint, we're driving to be better with the instruction and to meet the kids where they are and then move them where we want them to be and where they want to be. That porch of a graduate we've worked on, it's got to be more than just 22 credits when you get your diploma. You've got to be ready to hit the workforce or get to that university and be successful at a university when you don't have mom, dad, and a teacher. Where's your homework? Mm-hmm. So it's more than just all those things. And really, public school is it's a social service. There's just so much we could touch on. Like during COVID, when school wasn't meeting, WCS child abuse went down considerably because who typically sees that child? Who notices the difference in that child when they're being subjected to things? It's the teacher, and of course there's a mandatory law, you got to report it, but not being with that teacher and seeing what's happening, the abuse to some of these kids, it was amazing data how all that went down during COVID because our teachers weren't there to help in some ways protect those kids from. So there's just it's such an impactful thing if our public schools begin to get cut.
No doubt. And just like what you said, where we're at, and I wouldn't trade anything for where I was raised, where I got to raise my family, and I'm still in the process of raising. I've got an 8-year-old too. So for some,
how's our dribbling? Let's
listen. We went to the ball game Tuesday night, and when we got home, we had about a 15-20 minute carport time that we worked on our dribbling. And, there was a few tears there because she couldn't get it exactly the way that she wanted to. But just like anything else, a little hard work, little dedication. And she could go 5 times between her legs, dribbling around her legs. She's got that down. But we're trying to work on just going one dribble between the legs back and forth. Mm-hmm. Our goal was to get 5, and she got the 5, and then last night was only 4. So we've regressed a little, but that gives us a goal to shoot for tonight.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
That's great. That's teaching in a nutshell, right?
Yes,
there.
sir. Yes, sir. But back to what we were talking about, just the heartbeat of the communities. And it is. And like I said, I wouldn't trade it anything. And I've had so many people from Nashville I brought back to Greenfield, and not a one of them that says, guys, I can't believe you live here. They all say, I can't imagine being able to raise a family here. And just a few years ago, we played USJ. The girls were playing, and one of my good friends, Jody Pickens, he's a DA down there. He came up to me, and it stuck with me ever since. He says, Tandy, you don't know how good y'all have got it for a community. Y'all got more fans here than we've got, and it's a home game for us.
Right.
And everybody knows everybody. They stand up for the kids. And not just Greenfield, Dresden, Gleason, Martin, they all do. And you don't believe me, just go to a game on Friday night.
That's right.
It don't matter who you're playing. The towns are going to be there. And these kids don't know how good they've got it to have the support that they do in our county.
So we're preaching to the choir to each
Yes,
other
sir.
here.
Yes, sir.
So how, I guess, put you on the spot a little bit. How do you, as a representative, spread that message that, because your schools are strong. I've heard you say that. How do you influence other legislators up there in Nashville to see, and again, we didn't even got into this. I've printed pages of notes I've typed that are just mind-blowing that we're even considering this in Tennessee.
How can I say this? You make it easy. When I know that I got people back home that's putting Weakley County, putting these other counties, that we've got a track record that proves what we do and we're on the right path.
Right.
And the school boards from the 3 counties that I represent, I don't have anybody that says, Tandy, hey, you're tripping yourself here. You need to look at it this way. They all stand behind me, and I stand behind them, that we've got a good thing going.
Right.
Not that we don't have issues funding.
Sure.
We've got issues, but it's not the same issues as a Nashville or an urban school, a Memphis school. And that cookie-cutter approach that this is what we're going to do, this will put everybody on the right path, that's not the case. And I'm not throwing darts at those schools because we have issues too.
Right.
And there's not a school system that don't. But we got people here, like I said before, when you got kids as the common denominator in every equation that comes before you, comes before the school board, when you got the right criteria, you're doing it for the right reasons. You're trending in the right direction.
All right, you spurred a question.
Yep.
Now that you've kind of been in that game a little bit, why do you think schools, particularly public school, has become ground zero for politics?
Like I said, I think that our governor is as good a Christian man that walks the face of the earth. But just like things that are done, and nothing under, and no one construe what I'm saying, that anything was underhanded at no stretch of the imagination.
Right.
But it's politics. And when you have lots of money involved, which there's lots of people that see the payday on state funding schools. Well, if we could tap into that, man, hey,
right.
That's our production. That's our production, and they do. They put out a good cause, and a lot of the states don't have the track record that Tennessee does. Right. We rank where we do because we got good schools, and we got good folks, but a lot of folks can't say that.
Right.
So that makes it an easy target to say, hey, we can compete with that.
Right.
But you're not competing with apples and oranges. And I'm all about competition. I think we all
100%.
are. We played sports, but you got to be fair about it.
That's right.
And a competition makes iron sharpens iron. And I've told it to my kids. You ask them, they'll finish the sentence. But when it's stacked against you and the playing field's not level, I could construe numbers that show a different outcome.
Sure, and if the rules keep changing on
Yes, sir. When they move the goalpost,
that's right.
It's hard to kick a field goal.
And earlier, that kind of brought me back. Earlier, you were talking about, if you are the private school looking at taking this money, 3-4 years, or anytime where tax dollars flow, hoops usually have to be jumped through. That makes me think probably the biggest concern I hear, and it's definitely one of mine as well, is when it comes down to competition. We'll compete all day long with a private school. I'll put our teachers up against anybody. I'll put our students up against anybody. But the accountability needs to be the same. Are they going to take a TCAP? Are they going to take an ELC? Is that going to be the exact same test our kids are taking? If that were to be written into the bill, I think that eases a little bit because, it's still not good, but you can't pick and choose where equity applies.
No.
You can't say, because where that public tax dollar goes, the equity's got to go with that. And that's why we fight so hard to keep that in schools. We're looking at different quintiles, different subgroups. Are we servicing this? Are we servicing that? Because we know the accountability is there, and that accountability needs to be there because it's good for kids. Mm-hmm. We don't want a kid to be left behind, the old phrase used to be, and we don't want them to be forgotten. And that's one of the things, I've been working with our principals this week, having conversations, going around talking to all the principals, and that's one of the things that as evaluators, when we evaluate a teacher, that we're always looking for with that teacher is, as a student, can I hide in your classroom? Are you engaging me as the educator? And, and if that score is not there, if that evidence is not there, then we have that post-conference conversation with that teacher like, hey, I can sit in here and not say a word, and you never challenge me. You don't know if I know it or don't know it, whatever the learning target is for the day. So we can improve on instruction. There's good teachers, there's bad teachers, there's good reps, there's bad reps, So we've got our problems. But make the accountability the same. And I guarantee you Weakley County will stand toe-to-toe with anybody.
No doubt. And we want to do that.
That's right.
The competition, there ain't anybody that doesn't want to show that they're the best,
right,
regardless of whatever job you're in, whatever you're doing. But you want a level playing field.
That's right.
And that's where me and the governor, we differ. If I was in his, if I was doing what he did, and I knew that, let's just say Jackson, Jackson, hey, a lot more voters, a lot bigger area when he stopped the tractor. But I wish he would have, when he was making his rounds there with the 95 county tour and on the tractor, I wish you'd have stayed in Weakley County just a little bit longer, or Carroll County, or Henry County, because we got a lot to offer. But I get it. Hey, like I said, as good a Christian man as in the state of Tennessee, but we differ on this. And maybe he had the same thing that I did, and not a coincidence, but he had that life-changing moment that this is the direction that he wanted, that he saw that we need to go. But that's what makes the world go round.
Right.
And I'll argue, like I said, I'll come home a bad politician before I say, no, hey, I really think this is the right way. I said what I was going to do, and I stand behind it, and I want to wear my West Tennessee hat. I want to wear it tall, and not just in Nashville, but when I put this behind me.
And there's, I'm glad you feel that way, because there's a lot riding on that.
Yes, sir.
You know? But, you know, we've talked a little bit about vouchers, and just for the sake of time, kind of wrap up, you know, and funding. And like I said, if we had time, well, I've got a lot on vouchers. I'm telling you, it's not worked anywhere. You know, at no point should a bad policy be put through just because it's an agenda.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't mind saying it for the world. I'm as conservative as you're going to get, probably. But, man, when schools are working, leave them alone.
Yeah.
And every year there's a whole new agenda we got to regroup. And that's another thing I had a little section on here in my notes just to ask, you know, legislation that we'd love to see. One of those, kind of jumping on that point, is all the bills that are brought up, going back to, you know, public school being ground zero for politics sometimes. All those bills get introduced, and, you know, and maybe a third or whatever will make it through into law. Well, sometimes when they take effect immediately, or maybe July 1, it's hard for school systems to be compliant by the time school starts 1st of August. You know,
Yeah.
so that's another thing that I'd like to say. Hey, if you think it's important enough to be a law, unless it's a life or death kind of situation, like school safety in some cases, but even then it's hard to become compliant. Can we, you know, give us a year?
Yeah.
You know, but anyway, that's a whole nother topic. But let's talk before we leave the funding and vouchers. I had this highlighted like 3 different colors, so I probably need to bring that up. Has there been any talk about like private school? Like, where's homeschool? Do you think that'll be in the bill? Because I know homeschool and private school is 2 different things.
It is. I don't know. Last year, you know, even the Senate had a different version than the House.
Right.
And they never could get it worked out. So I don't know. I don't know how it's gonna read.
Right.
And to say that we can sit here and talk about one way or the other, I don't know. And you know, some of my best friends homeschool. They're very capable, and don't construe anything that I'm saying. If that you feel led to do that, by all means. But just know you got a great school system here in West Tennessee to fall back on.
That's right. And, you know, and to that point, us looking at that data, I'm going to use Gleason because they've just looked at it recently. Gleason School, you know, Principal Lawrence there went back 10 years and looked at all their kids who have transferred out. Okay? Homeschool students and unknown, meaning they maybe signed a form they're going to go homeschool, but they never got a request for records.
Right.
Over 10 years, 185 students there. So the only documentation that they have out of that 185, I think, is only 1 or 2 that ever actually finished on time and got a diploma. Now, that data specifically, and that's just one school, and I'm guessing if we asked all our other schools to go back 10 years in records and dig all that out and put that in a spreadsheet, it'd probably be very similar. But, you know, Mr. Frazier, you know, has quoted before, you know, too often when we look at that, homeschool equals no school, because they've either been truant and they don't want to go, you know, be held accountable by the courts for that, since that's a state law. Maybe they've been in disciplinary situations, pretty heavy, and so I'm not going to go to alternative school for what I did, so they pull out and go homeschool. More often than not, it's situations like that we have found in our county. And again, talking with other superintendents, it's the same trend for the most part, especially in comparable counties. So really, homeschool, it doesn't match what we're giving them. And in that same data that Principal Lawrence looked at, they went back and looked at every kid that's come through their doors through Gleason in the last 10 years. All but 4 have graduated. That's a 99% graduation rate. So here's your options. You stay with us and let us push you, just like you pushed her in the carport. You know, we're going to get the 5 reps, and you're going to finish with a state diploma. Or you go homeschool, and you got a 99% chance you're not going to finish because there's no accountability.
Right, and we've looked at data that, you know, how it reads and all that. What I seen the trend was that, you know, you hope that they come back, especially if it's in a situation here where they're maybe not cracking the books at home, But we've seen, what we've read in Nashville is when kids get bent out of shape about something and say, hey, we're pull out, this is what I'm going to do in my homeschool. Well, the parents see the writing on the wall maybe a year, or maybe this wasn't what they thought it was cracked up to be. Hey, before kids were at school, so many hours, X amount of hours a week. Now they're at home X amount of hours a week. Hey, this isn't, maybe a little bit more fussing and fighting. And so what we see is when the kids do, or the parents see that, hey, no, you're going to go back to school, then the kids come back to school and they're 14 months behind.
They are
16 months behind. And
almost every time they're behind
then
academically.
It's well, we got to get them caught up. We got to get them caught up. And with that said, I know I'm the gray-haired guy, the old-looking guy up here, but I've got an 8-year-old too, so I'm not just trying to make rules for thou. This is affecting me too.
Sure.
And so I hope everybody knows that I want things that work. And just I hate to even bring it up because you didn't bring it up, but third grade retention, please. Last night we try to read a book a night, and I know it's hard. And phones I'll get where I've got to start studying on something's coming up, and I'll get lost in my laptop, get lost in my iPad.
Sure.
And I know my wife does it. I'm sure other folks do too. Get lost. You look up and it's an hour and a half.
It's 9 o'clock. It's bedtime. Yeah.
Hey, take the time. Read to your kids. Read. We read last night, Biscuit and the Parade. She come in. She said, Dad, I got a book brought home, but I can't read it. Can you help me? Well, heck yeah. I shoot you. Let's do this. So we try to read at night. So the third grade test is coming. A lot of folks, and I get lots of phone calls. And you're putting my little Johnny or little Susie through turmoil here.
Right.
Well, life's coming, but I promise you, they'll do better on the test. Start now. Don't wait till 6 weeks before third grade ends. Start now. First, second, kindergarten, first, second, and be ready for that one test there. That's gonna, it's gonna influence kids a lot there.
Right.
Going to the next grade.
It does, and that's a point I've got under potential legislation. And I think I called you about it when this first came up this year. We had a goal, and we missed it by 2% for third grade. Okay, well, through the state protocol, those kids can retest. So those kids came back and they retested. The kids who retook the test and scored proficient got us to our goal. So the state said, you're proficient, you're going to be promoted to fourth grade, your own grade level. Then when our data comes out, that doesn't show. So, I think, and of course, we've petitioned the state. Like I said, I even called
Yeah,
you.
so yeah,
Hey, this doesn't make sense to me.
You did everything that you were asked
Yeah.
to do, and the kids did better.
Right.
Well, not that you're looking for it, but you need that. Hey, attaboy. Hey, we did what we did, and we benefited from it.
Because in
And
front of
there's-
our teachers,
and
it's
there's
going to
no-
be green or red.
That's right.
And,
And
we want, if they're green, I don't want to have to put up a red.
that's right.
And the bottom line with that is the feedback we got back finally after that email got kicked around was, well, it's not as rigorous because there's no essay with it. That was kind of the gist of well, maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but it's your test,
That's right.
and it's good enough for you to say they can be promoted. So why is it not good enough to be in the data?
You validate.
You've made that kid disappear.
Yes.
Yeah. In fact, they're going to show up negative even though they're being promoted.
Yep.
So that is something I think needs to be cleaned
Addressed,
up
yes.
up there to say if kids take a retake and they're proficient, that counts towards that school's data because they're proficient.
Yeah, you've done everything that was asked of you.
That's right.
And
the
so-
student has too.
That's right.
Right.
So you shouldn't get and most definitely. It's on my desk right now because I remember the conversation and I took notes and I still got the email and it's on my desk. So when we get ready for session there, we'll definitely want to revisit that.
Right. And I appreciate that. But back to what I've got highlighted. Private schools who offer an online option, has that been discussed as far as vouchers?
No, I have not heard anything about that.
I've heard straight from the horse's mouth.
Yep. But don't doubt. Yeah, I believe everything you're saying.
So through what I've heard, because I've called and said, hey, what are y'all thinking on the private school side of this? And generally what they're saying is this. We've got an online school set up, and we're only, the tuition won't be the tuition that we charge to come into the school. The tuition will be whatever that voucher turns out to be. And then, and this is theoretical, hypothetical, all 4,000 of our kids could go online with that private school. I mean, what would keep them from that? So it goes back to whatever bill shows up, they need to think about every potential option, because I'm guarantee you a private school is revenue generated. Now, the goals and the founders of those schools, I'm sure, hey, we want more of a Christian teaching, and most of our private schools are Christian-based, and like I said, 100% for that. But they're also revenue-driven.
Profit-oriented. Yes, sir.
And so, the exact answer I got was, we're going to make this profitable for our school, off our kids. So, but my problem with that is now an online private school, if the voucher allows private without some kind of an online clause in there, it just turns into homeschool. They unenroll with us, and even though state compulsory attendance laws say they've got to be in the school, they leave us. So just like Principal Lawrence was trying to find these kids, like, I don't know where they went. They just unenrolled.
Yep.
So the accountability on that is something I just want to stress out too, that is, as this healthy debate cranks up in Nashville.
And no debate. No, the debate in Nashville, right. Yeah. No debate here. I'm in full agreement.
But kind of jumping gears when we wrap up here, what about safety? You see anything coming down the road, any more legislation?
Oh, yes, sir.
Safety-wise?
Yes, sir. There was lots. That was a big push last year. Everybody knows about the tragic events that happened there in Nashville. And, that was the big stance from the other side of the aisle. We don't want to make our schools look like prisons. Exactly.
Agreed.
But I do want to make them fortified, and I want to make them safe. And that was we put SROs in the funding for SROs.
That's been great.
Thank
y'all
every
for
school.
doing that. Yep.
Yes, sir. And even got opposition on that. I don't understand that. I just. But when you don't put kids as a common denominator, that's where you get on tangents that we need to do something different. This is not a good look. Blood on the doorsteps at schools is not a good look. That's right. And whatever it is, there's been psychotic, crazy people all through time, and it's going to continue that way. That's right. And so whatever we got to do to protect the vulnerable, I'm all in.
Right. Well, and one thing, I just wanted to stress, just recently we demoed, I won't mention the company yet, but some software that, gives our surveillance cameras extra capability. I'll just put it at that, because I know there's some laws where we can't talk much about our capabilities. I feel like I'm working for the Department of Defense sometimes, but it's going to be costly.
Yes.
I'm going to try to find a way to pay for it. But if there is any other funding available or funding made available for grant money or something, maybe at some point I can talk to you more in details.
Yes, sir.
But like I think even in the latest shooting in Georgia, they had the individual fobs built into their ID cards. Probably about as quick as you could alert those SROs that there was outside of hearing. Mm-hmm. But as soon as that teacher saw that threat, hit that. But this software, and I've read through it, every time there's a new detail comes out about that, I read those case studies. The only way the response from that school could have really been any quicker about what happened that morning is if that camera had picked that student up coming out of the bathroom. And that would have made it a little quicker and maybe saved some lives. Mm-hmm. So, not advertising for this company, but I'm going to try to figure out a way somehow, some way to do it. But obviously, if the state in education is looking at some other safety grant opportunities, we recently had some another device demoed, and they've actually got a bill that they're going to try to push through for their device, and have got some legislators backing them to try to get that grant approved. So, and we've looked at that, but I think this other deal would even be more effective. But anyway, I just want to make a plug. Any kind of grants that y'all can come up with,
I'm all in.
It would help us. But the SRO funding has been excellent. We were able to, and that's a great testament to this county. They were way out ahead of that. They've had SROs here between the Sheriff's Department and Martin PD way before the state even started taking up that initiative. But now with this money that's come through with the law of that last year, we've gained 2 more And so, every campus
Yep.
has one now, and
Yep.
that's just been a big plus. I'll kind of move into some potential legislation because this is really where, the future's coming and, how we would love to have our voice heard. The third grade testing retakes, that was one. This was something that administratively, for the sake of our teachers, is there any way we could get some kind of clause in there where our data's got to be back to us by August? Like, we're about to hit November, and we still don't have all our data.
And we went through this before. I remember having multiple conversations with this before. Yes, and it was just seemed like we got into he said this and she said this. We never could nail anybody down on why we didn't have the data.
Right.
And you've got to have that. I wish I had that magic wand.
Yeah.
And but no, definitely noted, and try to put the best foot forward there. We get something. Because you got to have the data.
Sure.
Everybody does.
The coach in me,
Yeah.
I know they're going to run the ball in C-gap. I'm fixing to stack up C-gap.
That's right.
So, kind of the same premise here. If we know this is some weakness in our school system, then we've got to funnel and use the TISA money to get
Right.
sources to that gap. But not getting it till November hurts sometimes.
Yes.
And I think technology-wise, we're close enough. We'll be able to pretty well get it all by August, I think. I'm sure the experts would disagree with me, but boots on the ground says we need it, much earlier. Here was another one that came up because I did a little survey, just going around asking some folks on the when we do our writing test. Maybe this might be something for the instruction committee that you're on. I don't know what all lands in front of you, but we get a score back on those essays that our students performed, but we never get any feedback. So, like, even if it was just a bulleted list of like, hey, a lot of your kids were weak in punctuation, or run-on sentences. Just any kind of, they never cited the text when they wrote their essay. Some kind of feedback from the scores as a district level. So then when we have our ELA meetings, hey, we've got to dig into that problem because we're not performing at that level.
So we just
get a score.
You just get a percentage,
Right.
And there's nothing with that.
Made an 87, but I don't know where those 13 points were.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So if we had some kind of feedback,
Where you can make a correlation of where
we can adjust instructions.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. That would be a big plus.
I'm floored that there's not. I would have thought that there would have been some instructions with the letter grade or the
Well,
percentage.
with the multiple choice sections, TCAP, our parents, we send home a copy. Hey, this is where they scored. This is where they fit on the percentile. But when it comes to the essay itself, we don't get feedback on that.
Yeah.
And that's a big, being able to communicating effectively is one of the things our stakeholders want in our graduates. So starting at third grade on that essay part, that would really help us. Last conference I attended, one of the things that came up from TDOE is all digital testing, all online testing for all grades. Now, there might have been a few who, echoed that with the state. But from what I gathered, and I'm definitely in this camp, as a superintendent, I don't think our third graders need to be testing online, especially when you're timed, if we're trying to get a proven product. But and I know they're saying that's kind of a gear for the state is to be all online. And again, you're asking me, you want the data by August. Well, online testing makes that happen. But those elementary kids, because here's what's going to happen. All the instruction is going to start shifting to online, right? Because you got to practice like you're going to play. That's not good for that age level.
Yep.
They need to be writing, not typing.
Yep.
And again, if we're teaching typing skills in third grade, maybe we can, maybe we can't. But there's some other priorities. Our multiplication tables need to come first.
No doubt.
So that's something that has been pitched to us, and I know it's got some merit, but I don't agree with it. So I'm not sure if that'll land in y'all's hands or if that's something just the state board will try to do. Or Algebra 2. Yes. I know that passed the committee at some point because I watched it online.
My buddy Tim Hicks, I think, was the one that brought it.
Well, he did a great job.
Yes.
And it seemed like everybody was on board with
On
it.
board.
But, I definitely support that.
Yeah, everybody I talked to, and I think we even had a conversation about it. I know I talked to a few math teachers around the county, and we were all in consensus, that, hey, there's other things here, and some fields may require it, and I get that. Right. But for the most part, and I had one of the best algebra teachers around, but I don't use it very often.
Right.
I don't know if I can say that I don't ever use it.
Right.
But well, I probably try to find X a lot more than what I realize. But most people, you know, it's
Right.
one of those things that you don't use.
Well, I just, you know, if we can get those by their junior year, you know, and I'm sure it would probably be replaced with another math course, but if we can get, you know, get them into those kind of like the same premise of the innovation school model, innovative
Yep.
school, you know, get them into an internship, you know, get them, or get into another CTE class.
And the earlier, the better.
That's right. Because again, we've got to get a workforce
yes.
out there.
Yes.
That's probably the only other thing that I would probably touch on, because I know we're over kind of what we were trying to shoot for here. But man, if there was anything the state could do, and I really don't know where to lead you on this, but childcare. Our teachers can't find places to put their own kids, you know, like. And I know that's a big issue everywhere.
That's been a topic. It don't matter what meetings that I go to, whatever the subject matter is, childcare.
Yeah.
It comes up. I was in a meeting in Jackson, I guess it was last year, and I mean, three-quarters of the meeting was about childcare.
Yeah.
And it's definitely an issue.
Well, it's a problem. You know, I think Miss Penny.
Yeah.
You know, she's booked and people are on a waiting list. So, you know, we'll hire a teacher and they're like, well, I don't even know where to put my
Yep.
students, you know, my kids. So that's, you know, that's another thing that affects education, but it's a broader issue because we'll have a lot of teachers say, I'm going to have to stay home,
Yeah.
you know. You know, kind of along those lines is, you know, even the maternity leave, that's been a good law, but allowing a teacher to just take it anytime during the year, that makes it tough on kids because, you know, we'll have some that say, well, I'm just going to be off every Friday, or I'm going to be off 2 days here or 3 days there, and then we're trying to get a sub. And so, again, I'm all behind choices, and as a parent, I'd probably be 100% behind that. But as what's best for those kids in the classroom, and you know, and the teacher's not worried about that at that point. They need to be family oriented. But that law allowing them to take a year and take it one day at a time if they want to,
Yeah.
makes it really hard on consistency learning
tough.
learning
It's
in
tough
that
to
classroom.
overcome. Yeah.
Yes, it is. But it's been a great law, and our teachers definitely, you know, we need that. Anything you want to share out as far as we hadn't already touched on?
No, sir. Just, I guess to lighten the moment here, I had something done, and my grandmother, when I was a kid, she always used to tell me, you know, whenever you're invited somewhere, they always had a big garden. You always carried something with them. You know, Jessica Darby always said, hey, if you go somewhere, you need to carry some. So I had this made here, and this was the bullet points there from the New York Times,
Yeah.
and it talked about Weakley County Schools. And, you know, most of the time when you get a publication, there's probably not a lot of olive branches that are being thrown, but the New York Times definitely threw one here. So I wanted to present this to you, your staff, your school board, and a sincere thank you for what y'all do.
You know, that's first of all, thank you. But second of all, that, you know, that's all on the backs of our teachers and those
Yes.
instructional coaches, and you know, but you know, according to that article, one of the very few in the nation that overcome COVID learning loss,
That's right.
and right here at home.
That's right.
So,
Right at the back door.
Yeah, leave us alone, let us work.
That's it. We know what we're doing.
Thank you.
Yes,
I
sir.
appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Appreciate
so
your
much.
time.
Well, again, I'm sure we're going to get in there another election, and
Well, and I hope so.
I'm going to keep my fingers crossed on that.
Yes, sir.
And,
We're plugging ahead, and I'm humbled to be in the running again and even being considered. And you know, like I said, it's one of the highlights of my life is being able to serve, because you don't get that warm fuzzy feeling by selling vegetables, but when you do get that phone call, man, you won't believe what happened. I got the phone call. We got the unemployment. We got our insurance taken care of. Man, that's you know, that's a feel good moment
Making a
for
difference.
me. Yes, sir.
Giving
sir.
back.
Yes, sir.
Which is what your story was all about.
Yes, sir.
When you're going to give back.
Yes, sir.
That's good. Well, hopefully soon, you know, depending on what happens with these vouchers, we may have to have you back on again. And
Yes,
give us
sir.
an update.
Yes, sir.
But,
We're ready to crank it up.
again,
and
I
get ready to
appreciate
go.
you. And thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
A big thank you to Representative Darby for taking the time to be with us today. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with your friends who you think would appreciate the conversation. This podcast is produced in partnership with Forever Communications, and you can find this episode and others on Google Podcast, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen. And follow us to stay connected to the Growing Our Future in Weakley County Schools podcast.